All right, let's see how we're looking here. Got 5 people in. We're gonna give people a second to join. I know we have some technical difficulties apparently from some people. Let me drop this here. I originally should have used this, but I didn't actually set up the Zoom webinar until after I created the form. So thanks for dealing with the double links. We'll do better next time. We're going to get started here in exactly 3 minutes. Actually, 4 minutes. Can you guys hear me okay? If you can hear me, say something in the chat. Just want to make sure that my microphone is working. The chat is disabled. It is. Well, can you hear me, Aisha, in the form of a question, I suppose, ask? I believe yes is the answer. I see a hand up. Awesome. Thank you. All right. 4 minutes. We're starting. We'll give folks a second to join. I had about 35 people sign up, so I expect more people are coming, but maybe they're having difficulties. So we'll give them a second. I shaved. Yeah, I did shave. I look very different, I know. All right. 2 minutes. 2 minutes and we're starting, guys. I'm going to make a quick coffee if I can. Do this quickly. Hold on. Lesson learned for the next time I do these, and I do plan to do a few more of these. I will use one link instead of a bunch. All right, I've got 8 people on. All right, guys. We're gonna get started in 1 minute. 1 minute. This is automatically being recorded as well. Hold on, I've got some people who are messaging me who aren't able to get in with their email. And I think I can maybe make this easier. Hold on, guys. Just first webinar, technical difficulties. No, let's do. Well, let me change it while it's in progress. 9 people on. Okay. I'm gonna grab this coffee when it's done. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna check the other chats in my Discord. You probably hear my coffee going off in the background. But we're gonna go ahead and jump into this presentation and learn a little bit about trading. So I randomly decided to come to the Keys. So I'm in the Florida Keys right now. It was a little last minute kind of decision. So bear with me as I do this. All right. I think you guys can see my presentation. So I'm going to do a quick little introduction of who I am, why you should listen to me, why does what I say matter at all, right? There are a lot of traders out there. Then we're going to dig into the volume profile, the meat and potatoes, go over a few setups. There's actually a setup yesterday. It's a really good example. I'm just going to use that one. So if you guys are on my stream yesterday, this trade should look familiar, but it's a really good example. Then we'll also talk about, if we have time, another setup from earlier last week, Q&A, and I'll drop you guys with some links after that. Had the chat disabled, might enable it for the next one. If you have a question, just type it in, ask the question. You guys can also pop over to the Discord if you're in there. If you're not, I'll give a link to that later. Okay, but please ask your questions in here. I only have one screen, so help me help you. Make it easy. Okay, so my mission, the reason I do this is I want to teach as many people as I can the skill of trading and help them unlock financial freedom. So I love trading, guys. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm a problem solver. I've always been super analytical since I was a kid. I always tell people I'm a nerd in disguise, right? So I love nerding out on stuff. Trading is just an endless way for me to do that. I've built tools around it. So if you guys are in my community, you know, I was a software engineer, so I've also built tools for doing like options research, all that stuff. I absolutely love trading, guys. I'll probably never stop doing it until the day that I die. Why is it so important to learn this as a skill? Okay, whether you like trading as much as me or not, the world is changing pretty obviously. I'm not going to be the first guy to tell you about AI. It's happening. We need more ways to make money for ourselves. You know, so for me, trading is or was a way for me to make a ton of money. You know, I ended up making a lot of money from a bunch of different sources all at the same time. But yeah, like 60% of that was trading, you know, consistently becoming profitable along with a few other things that I did. But even my role or my job as a software engineer, right? You know, our generation, everybody was told to learn to code. Now it's the first thing that they're automating away. So no job is safe. Doesn't matter if it's low, middle, high income. Okay. I doubt that trading will be automated away anytime soon, just because of the incentives behind the market, and at a minimum, just due to some plain old auction market theory. You know, at best, we'd have AIs competing against each other. Okay, so more about me. On the left, I went to Japan. Okay, bought a Z06 recently. Okay, I'm not really big on flexing, guys. I'm trying to actually do that more because it's good for my brand. It's really not who I am, though. I honestly, personally believe that everybody wants money for a different reason. I think money is a tool. I have very little emotional attachment to anything that I own. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were asking me about my car, like what would happen if it like got stolen or crashed. And I was just like, I just, you know, let's get another one. This is a car. But it is nice to have nice things. I am into fashion a little bit, right? But the biggest thing that money buys you is choices, options, sleeping well at night, right? So like this trip to Japan, that was like one trade that I took to pay for that, right? Did 10 days, me and my girl, was super cool. Z06 was 140 grand, pay cash for that. That's cool. That's my cat on the top left. Cool cat. Went to Peru with my boy Drew. Also a partner in that business now. We talk about that. And there's tons of things that you could do with it, right? So it could be maybe you have a car payment and you just want to make enough money to cover your car payment. You have a house. You want to make enough money to pay off your house. Maybe you have student loan debt. You want to make enough money to pay off your student loans. right? Maybe there's a business you want to start, right? I'm basically a serial entrepreneur at this point. I love being an entrepreneur. So the money that I make from trading has allowed me to invest in other businesses and do other things, whether you want to do real estate. I started doing real estate first, but I've paused on that because I've made money other ways, and I'm going to circle back to real estate again, right? So by no means do you have to just do one thing. I think it's silly when people are like, oh, you got to only do one thing, right? You need to make a lot of money from one thing, and then you can use that kind of as the driving force behind a bunch of other investments or whatever else you want to do in life. Okay, so why the volume profile and not something else? So 90% of day traders fail within the first year, and out of the remaining 10%, only about 1% consistently make real money. So day trading is more than hard. Okay, there are a few different levels, and I'll go through them quickly. One is day zero. It's phase zero. You don't know anything. Everything sounds magical. You don't get it. You don't know what it is. You're not sure what, a tick is versus a point, right? You're just learning definitions and you're just getting hit with a water hose. Then you start trading for a little bit. You learn some things. There's still some gotchas, some things you're not aware of, right? You're not aware of margin changes and things like that, but you've been trading. Maybe you've had some wins, you've had some losses, and you're trying to figure it out. And then the third level is like you've been trading for a while. You're probably still not consistent, but you know a lot of like the little facts and definitions, right? And you sound smart, but you can't actually execute. And that's where a lot of people stop. A lot of people get to the level of they could talk about the things, they could say some things that sound smart, but they can't actually turn that into edge and into a system that will make them money. That's where 99% of the internet is when you look at traders talking back and forth online, right? It's just a bunch of people who know facts and definitions, but can't actually turn that into edge. The volume profile, in my opinion, and my trading system is always being molded and changed, but this is probably something that I'll stick with forever. I'm almost certain at this point. I've used EMAs, I've used a few other things, but I've slimmed my system down to just really the volume profile at this point because it's so simple. And that's why it's what I'm teaching to people. There are other things that you can use, right? This is going to be a really brief kind of breakdown of just the volume profile. The other important thing here, especially in the world that is, day trading today, there's a lot of crap out there, guys. Okay, so I guess without spending 30 minutes talking about it, I went down the journey. I went and looked at a bunch of other traders, right, on YouTube and around. And I was like, what is legit or not? And then I eventually actually just gave up on that and just traded by myself. So I just started journaling every single day. I started on an iPad. There's an app called Notability. I would write my thesis out every single morning, what equities or whatever I was trading, what I was looking for. I'd write my entry and exit kind of criteria, hypothesis, and how everything worked out. And I would do that religiously. And then after doing that, and then eventually I started trying to automate it and things like that. Okay. So I'm super adamant about journaling. Sorry, just opening up the chat here. About journaling and performance tracking. You can't improve what you don't measure. Okay. And you certainly can't be great if you don't measure. Nobody who's ever been exceptional at anything has kind of just winged it. If you're somebody who shies away from personal accountability, if you're the type of person who doesn't like the idea of, controlling what you put into your mind, like waking up and doing affirmations or waking up and listening to things that are motivational because it makes you cringe or you feel friction with it, it's because you're mediocre, right? Look at the life that you built for yourself and around you, and you're basically doing what everybody else does, and you're going to get what everybody else got. It's super weird. I get it. I do things like that. It feels cringy and weird when you first start doing it, and then you look at how your life unfolds and you go, huh, makes sense, right? So doing those things like that is going to separate you. Having a real system is what's going to separate you from all the chaff out there. So let us talk about the volume profile. My coffee's done. 1 second. You guys can actually still hear me because I'm on a mic. So the volume profile tells us something that is borderline magical. And what it tells us is it tells us exactly where people are positioned in the market, right? This is something that when you listen to other traders, Right now, you can just go and listen to other traders on any YouTube channel. No one talks about it, even though it's right there. It's not like a hidden indicator or anything like that. People just don't think of the market in this sense. Most people are very technical traders, right? They're always thinking about just candlesticks, and there's this intuitive other layer to the market that the volume profile teaches or shows us, which is exactly where people are positioned. So on my screen right now, and I think I can use this, there is this shelf on the side, right? This is a histogram. It's a sideways bar chart. Okay, it tells us exactly where people are positioned and how many people are positioned there. That's something that the candlesticks don't show us, right? So if I'm looking at a set of candles, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm not going to talk about what these candles are. All they show us is that through this time period, which was 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on whatever day this was, what prices were hit, right? We do have volume down here. So this tells us how many people came in at that time, but it doesn't tell us how many people were positioned at 57.20. Okay, how many people actually showed up to play the game that is speculating and positioning for short and very far into the future at this price? Okay, the analogy that I like to talk about, the example that I like to use is with cars. Okay, if you're a car dealer, okay, and come with me, close your eyes, you're a car dealer. You're driving down the highway and you see your name on the big dealership sign and it says Knight Ford in my example, but for you, it's going to be whatever your name is, Cadillac or Toyota. Okay, you're a dealer and you've got a lot of cars. You have a lot of mid-market cars. In this case, let's say Toyota Camrys. You're selling Camrys. And you look out and you're like, all right, I've got a bunch of Toyota Camrys. We've got a pretty big used inventory. I really want to get rid of this used Camry inventory. And you look at the market, you go on Google, and you see that the average sale price for all the Toyota Camrys is $35,000. Okay. Now, there's a few simple strategies here. If you want to offload these Camrys as fast as possible, the simplest thing to do would be to undercut the average price, right? You're offering a good deal, right? That's going to open up space on your lot and get rid of your inventory. Okay. When you look at the data, though, that you see that people are buying Camrys for a little bit higher than average, right? There's still a market at 38, 39, or even 40. Some people are spending 40K on Camrys because they're terrible negotiators, right? The volume profile is that information, right? It's telling you how many people are positioned somewhere. So it's the exact same if you buy shares of Apple, and we're going to get closer to futures. So you have a bunch of shares of Apple that you want to get rid of, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what price do I know I can offload these at reasonably? And you see that, the ticker, the market's going up and down, but you don't need to just sell one share of Apple. You need to you need to sell let's say 500,000 shares of Apple. Okay. You are going to meet the market. You're going to want to list those shares of Apple at wherever the biggest node is, right? You want to meet the market where it's at when it comes to liquidating stuff. Okay. So as traders, we're always concerned about this because what this volume profile is telling us is where price is likely to get stuck and where it's more likely for us to have difficulty elsewhere on the chart. Where did that little tool go? Literally never used this before. Okay, so if I'm selling up here, right? If I'm trying to offload stuff up here, if I'm trying to offload or get in down here, there are far less people at these prices than at these prices. Okay, so the further or the bigger that these bars are, the more people that are positioned there. Okay. Now, the reason that this is important, let me go to the next slide here. How do I stop doing whatever this is? The reason that this is important is it gives us trades like this. So this is a trade I took yesterday on stream. This is in a sim account. Okay, we're not going to go down. Actually, I'll do a quick spiel on sim trading. So everybody should sim trade. You should sim trade all the time. I do it on stream. This was an example for a few different reasons, but just an example of the trade using the simple using the system that we're about to talk about here. Okay, so trading 5 ESs would have been about $13,250. Just a normal range day trade. Now, there's a few things here. So one, let me get my tools out. There's this big node here that is highlighted, right? There's this shelf of liquidity that we can see, okay? Price likes to range across these shelves. And so what I did on this session yesterday is I bought at the bottom of this node, and then I had my TP, my take profit, at the other side. Okay. At its core, the VPE, or what we're now calling the VPE, the volume profile edge, is really this system. It's just finding major nodes, and you can write this down, but like the core principle of the system is finding major nodes and expecting the market to traverse them. Okay, I expect the market to traverse the prices that have the most participation. Why? Well, it just makes sense. If all of the people are here, right, just like in the Toyota Camry example or in the offloading shares of Apple example, right, we know there's a market here. Now, new markets can form. It doesn't mean that this node might not get bigger later, but we know for a fact, and we can see it here, that the price is probably going to traverse this until all of these people, what's a word that I can use to think about it? I guess from a trading narrative perspective, till all of these people are settled up, okay? So until that happens, we are essentially just looking to trade across these nodes. Now we're going to go look at the charts in like a second for some real examples, but just keep that in mind. Okay, the other thing here, and let me go back a slide. Oh, let me go back. Yeah. So on this slide, we're just looking at, there's an indicator that's on the screen. You can see it on the top left. It's called the visible range volume profile, the VRVP. This is on TradingView. If you haven't used TradingView, it's just a charting tool. Check it out. It's free. I pay for the premium version. I don't know the differences. I'll just say this. If you want to be a trader, just pay for the tools. They pay themselves for themselves easily. So this is the visible range volume profile, and it's showing me the volume for the set of prices for whatever's on my screen. Okay, so this indicator in general is always gated by time, right? In this case, the VRVP, the visible range volume profile, is showing me this volume profile, this histogram on the right side of my screen for whatever is on my screen. And then again, the height of the bars here are the volume or the number of people at this price. So at 56.80, okay, there was this many people. I don't have a number on here. I could look at the actual like volume at this price. I don't really care. It's all about relative, what's relative to me. And then you can see here that it actually, you know, slants off a little bit, which is fine. But in general, these prices have most of the volume, right? Compared to these prices down here. Okay, but that's just for what's on the screen. If I zoomed out, this is the 1 hour chart, it would look slightly different. And we're going to do that in a second. One other key concept that you need to keep in mind and write this down is the idea of traps. Okay, traps and where they're most likely to be. So there's really two key components to our system, which are, we're going to keep it super simple here because I'm only want to do this for an hour today, which is entry and exit levels. Okay, now this is ignoring like technical analysis and like the current trend and things like that. But there are only really 4 areas every single day that we should care about, which is the previous day low, previous day high, and then the overnight high and the overnight low. Okay, so this was for assuming we're trading, you know, Friday. Why? Why, Forrest? Why do we care about those areas? Well, good question, theoretical question asker. There's this concept I call the last man, okay? The last person, whatever you want to politically correctly call them. Somebody went long here, okay? And for lack of a better term, that person got effed, okay? They got absolutely obliterated. If they did that on this date, they got obliterated. If they did it on this date, they got obliterated. And if they did that on this date, they got obliterated, okay? If we look at the edges of the node, we can see that people also probably went long here. They were a little bit green, but they still got smoked, right? Once prices came back in, okay? There are also people who went long here. There's also people that went long here, okay? So what I'm doing as a trader is I'm looking for the edges that have confluence with my node, right? So there's these lows that we put in here, which are lined up with these lows down here, right? So the reason these edges are important, having confluence with the volume profile, as well as our last man or last person theory, is we know that these prices here are where people are going to show up to play the game for sure, okay? Why? Well, let's just use this bottom side as an example. If I went short down here, okay, and most of the market is above me, okay, I went short down here. Let's actually change the color of that to red, okay? I went short in this time period earlier in the week on the 16th, 56.50. I thought the market was going down, okay? I was positive the market was going down. I was like, called my mom and said, Mom, market's going down. What happened? Market went up. I'm sweating bullets. I might be crying due to the immense amount of pain that I'm in, okay? The market went up almost immediately, okay? Comes down a little bit. I'm like, oh, thank God. Nope, goes back up. Starts to come back to my entry. What am I most likely to do around my entry after being in pain for so long? I'm going to get out. I'm going to get out in two ways, and we'll see this. You'll actually see the speed of the candles change. If you're very astute, you don't have time to talk about that. But as we approach the extremes, you will see people who are racing to get out. There's two types of people. People who are racing to get out because they're afraid that they might not get back to break even. And then there's people who are going to be a little bit patient, but as soon as we sweep this price, okay, as soon as the market cracks through this price or retests it to the penny, we've cleaned all those people up. Everybody who was trapped has now had an opportunity to get out unless they suck, right? A lot of people do suck. They might be there. But the point is that very likely the last sucker got cleaned up, okay? So pushing through these prices is another key component of our system. So what that allows us to do, if we simplify this, and we'll go back to the example from yesterday, is we can just wait and do nothing until we get to these prices. Okay, I'll say that again. We can wait and do nothing until we get to these key levels. The previous day high, previous day low, overnight high, and the overnight low. Okay, overnight is the EU session. Okay, it's when the market's open over there. A lot of volume comes in, so we know that people are either profitable or trapped around those prices. The other side of this that I should mention is that max profit goes along with max pain. Okay, so every edge is where people are going to be taking profits or trying to get out to cover, right? Almost certainly, which is why they're the best places to take trades. It's also why after a sweep, we can get something called a nice mean reversion trade. So let's take a look at how this played out yesterday, okay? Let me stop sharing and reshare my screen. It's a quick question. The nodes on the right change based on how many days you are showing on the chart. Is there a rule of thumb how many days you incorporate for what time frame you are using? I'll talk about that. The other question for us, did you identify that high value node only on the 1 hour or initially on the daily? Good question. So I'll answer both of those here on the chart. Okay, you guys can see my screen, I imagine. Cool. So what do we include? So I do start on the daily. Because this is only 1 hour, we can't cover everything. So for those of you that are new or this is the first time, this node was actually identified on the higher time frames. Okay, this bracket is like very luckily still here because the market closed and I didn't hit my TP exactly. So it's nice that I don't have to draw it up, for example. But if I just zoom out here to the daily, and we're going to let this indicator called the visible range volume profile load. Okay, so yeah, we'll get rid of those. You can see here that there are all these nodes that are forming. Okay, someone mentioned in the question high volume node or high value. That's what these large nodes are called. So every single one of these nodes here is where there is increased levels of participation, right? So there's a node here, and you can see that we're just whipsawing across this node right now, right? If you go back in time and use the chart replay tool, everywhere where there's consolidation on the charts, you probably have a node, okay? And then as a trader, the faster that we can identify these levels allows us to get our trade thesis, right? I need to take a sip of coffee. It's good. That is good. Second cup of coffee on the day. It's basically my first coffee for me. So you can see that we're just trading across this. What was the other question here? Let me see. Yeah, the nodes on the right change. Yeah. So is there a rule of thumb for how far back? So the this indicator will calculate this for whatever's on the screen. So for example, to make that super clear, if I zoom into here, we're going to see something very different, right? We'll give it a second to load. It looks much less dramatic. Same if I go to the 4 hour. Okay. What is the rule of thumb? This is very subjective. I haven't turned this into a more objective thing to teach, just to be clear of exactly how much data to put. I like to center what I'm looking at around major price pivots. Okay, so think of these as the V's. Okay, so here's a pivot, for example. Let me get my, so here, right? And I like to line my screen up maybe with that most recent pivot down there. Why? Well, it just makes sense to me because those are the big inflections in the market, right? I think of the market as like a story. I'm always trying to think of what's happening next in the story. Okay, that's actually how I think about it. You guys often hear me say the narrative of the day. It's because I'm trying to figure out what story makes the most sense based off of the auction, right? Based off of where people are positioned. People, these are people. Okay, a little tangent here. These are people. Okay, you're not fighting a machine. One of the biggest things that irks me, I think, especially in trader education, is this idea that there's some core algorithm that runs everything. There is not, guys. Okay, if there was a core algorithm that ran everything, we wouldn't have multiple large hedge funds competing against each other, right? I'm sure that these people and funds are employing algorithms against each other, but it still is very much the wild, wild west. You know, trading is one of the things where there are winners and losers, and we know there are losers. People lose every single day, not just retail traders, right? It's not big versus small. Large institutions are getting smoked on a daily basis, guys. You're just not hearing about it because they're not like the billionaire institutions, but these are like, you know, house trading shops, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. Like people do lose money because they're on the other side of some other big player. So keep that in mind. These are people who are positioned here, and these people who are positioned here, whether they're you, your grandma, or a hedge fund, have to act. Okay, when they're in profit or when they're under pressure, they have to. Okay, everybody, doesn't matter if you're an analyst or, you know, the CEO of some big company, everybody sweats under basically the same set of circumstances. So this allows us to take smart trades. So let's actually use the 1 hour. This is a trade that I took on Friday, which was yesterday. And let's talk about it. Okay, so we're going to use the replay tool. If you haven't used the chart replay tool, just come up here to replay. You can get to the 1 hour just by typing 1H. Okay, for anybody who hasn't used TradingView, I imagine that most of you have. And let's look at what information we actually had on the hourly chart going back a little bit. Okay. Okay. So on the 1 hour chart, if we just zoom out a little bit, I'm going to keep the session volume profile off. This is another volume profile indicator that you'll often see me use. It calculates this for each session. We'll turn that on in a second. What I really just want to see is where we are in the grand scheme of things inside of this node. Now, if you recall, if you go to the 4-hour, there's this node that we're trading across here. So on this chart, and it might be small, this is something I mentioned earlier just on this webinar. You essentially, the core principle of the VPE is just trading across these nodes. So on that principle alone, you can see that we're at the bottom of this node right here in replay. So I should be able to, just expecting this node to get traversed, I'm not doing any technical analysis. I'm not doing any technical analysis. 0, okay? I should be able to buy because of the core principle of the volume profile. This is so key. It's something that is missed every single day by people who are overcomplicating this. I'm telling you guys, it's so much simpler when you just trade the volume profile. Now, across different time frames and all that, that's where technical can help you be more certain, and confluence matters, yes, and all these other things matter, yes. But at its core, if you expect the market's ranging and we're at the bottom of a node, it should go to the top of the node, right? So I could just buy here, okay? And on this time frame, I could put a TP, I don't know, somewhere up here, okay? Now, let's just see what happens. Well, we hit my TP immediately because I replayed too fast. But you can see how it's just, the market just traverses these nodes. And the reason why it traverses these nodes is because there are people there. Now, when we actually add in our system of execution, let's go back to the 1 hour. Make sure you write this part down, by the way, okay? We're going to actually go through what the signal was. There's a few different things that we actually employ. We employ signal candles and things like that, okay? So the first is wait for a key level, right? So let's go back to our price that we were at, or the time frame that we were at. So it's 9 a.m. Friday. This went back to 9 a.m. Friday. This is, get rid of that. It's 9 a.m. Friday. Okay. There are a few levels down here. There is this low here at 56.57. Okay. And there's this one very close, 56.50. I would consider these almost the same low. So when we're talking about prior day lows, there's this prior day here, and then this was the overnight. Okay. So we had the close and these. These are very close together, right? So we basically want to sweep these prices for a long. If we're looking at the other side of things, we'll get rid of that naked POC. We're not talking about that in this video. There are the highs to look for, okay? So let's look at overnight high. Overnight high, this overnight session was down sloping, so overnight high is really up here at 57.24. And then the previous day highs, let's just call it that one, right? This price and this price are essentially the same. You could also box out the difference between these two prices if you wanted to, okay? So we've got overnight highs. Let me just label these. Overnight highs. And this will be our, whoops. No, let me get rid of the rectangle. Let's say overnight lows. And this will be previous day highs. These 4 levels, okay, prior day low, high, etc., are the only ones that we care about to even look to take a trade. If the market's not at any one of these prices or these key areas on a day basis and you're trading the regular session, you probably really shouldn't be taking a trade. I have seen in my own Discord, okay, and I love them, but I've seen people who have, bragged and talked about taking so many trades just for me to outperform them in 1 or 2 trades. And it's because they're just taking things that like mathematically won't make sense. We haven't talked about RR, risk to reward, and things like that because I don't think they're too important. But let me just lay this out for you in terms of RR. If my system means that I'm always looking for technically the lows and highs of the day, if I'm looking to long after we sweep this price, basically hunting the low of the day, my RR is going to be all of the other side of the day. Okay, same if I take a short, which means from a stats perspective in terms of RR or whatever, managing my risk, okay, I'm always going to be in the best position, always, 100% of the time, okay, because I'm hunting. My system is literally hunting for the low of the day and the high of the day. This is really, 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 really important, or the low and high of whatever relative time frame you're in. What a lot of people will do is they will look to short here, right, or they'll look to take longs here, capturing the last little nugget of a trade, and then they get smoked when they're wrong because your risk now becomes the entirety of the day. Okay, if I short here and I'm wrong, then this entire node is money that I can lose. Versus if I long here, okay, and I'm wrong, my stop is just here, okay, and then I can reevaluate. So mathematically, it just makes sense. Your stats are always going to be buku stupid if you trade like this. Like people ask me about RR, and I'm like, I don't know, dude, 150 sometimes. Like the trades get ridiculous. All right, so what I want to do is let's do 15 minutes. We're going to replay, and once we get a signal candle on the 1 hour, we're going to take a trade here. Let me get my volume back. So we'll replay forward, and I believe that was the close. It was, okay. So we had this high volume green candle at what, 9 a.m. Okay, so market opens at 9:30, closes, and then we swept this price here. Now, it didn't sweep this price, but we did sweep this key low here. So there's a few things that I mentioned on stream. Let's actually go back 1 bar before this next bar opens. Okay. So this is where I took my long. I basically said, hey guys, this is a signal. So we look for key levels, and then we look for signal candles at key levels. This is very, very simple. And I know we're adding a ton of layers of things now, right? But remember, we're looking to trade the volume profile edge on the higher time frame. Now I'm just looking to refine my entry. I already showed you the example on the daily where you could basically just take this trade on the daily, just expecting it to traverse the node. The rest of this is really to refine our trades and for risk management, which is key. You got to stay alive or you can't make money. So signals at key levels. Okay, so a signal candle is a high volume candle in the direction we desire. Okay, so I'm simplifying that, but this would be like a shooting star, hammer candle, or a doji. Okay, we're not going to dig too deep into that. We don't have time. But signal candle. So I want to go long. I got an up candle. My white candles are up candles. I got an up candle in the direction I'm looking for. The last thing I'll layer in here is our session volume profile. I know we haven't talked about this, adding some complexity for you, but just adding all the layers for you. So I got my signal candle that I'm looking for. Is there a node from yesterday that I can trade into? So the session volume profile shows us the sets of prices, how much volume happened at each price within a session. So within this session yesterday, right, we can see that the node, the price with the most amount of volume, is highlighted with this red line here. And that price was 57.16. Okay, so maybe I take a long here, and maybe I put my TP at this node yesterday with the most amount of participation. Why would I put it there? Well, I know that there's more people positioned at this price from yesterday, which is pretty recent, than anywhere else. Okay, I'll say that again. I know that there are more people positioned here since yesterday than anywhere else. Okay, so I'll put my TP there. My stop, I'm going to put at the bottom of this candle. Okay. Now, for these trades, you basically, after your signal candle, you want your stop to be at the bottom of your signal candle. Okay, if you can't eat, a 5K loss in this case, lower your leverage. I have it set to 5 contracts. You could do 1, you could do minis, it's whatever. I'm not really talking about risk and leverage in this. It's a different conversation. Just want to highlight kind of how this trade works out. So we're going to go this 15 minutes at a time, and I want you to see how close we get to our stop. So this next candle that printed got very, very close, didn't get stopped out. Same thing happened live, by the way. talking about it. Talks about all the risk. Okay, stop was right here. But because we have this nice signal candle, it very gradually grinded up to wherever. Okay, I hate this pop-up every time. Okay, and then eventually, if we get out of replay mode, you can see that I still, so this is the bracket that I still have on. So the market closed and I was up 13,250. And I'm locked into this trade until, you know, settlement open, which is fine. But that is taking the trade on the 1 hour. You want the highest time frame possible. When you take a trade, I'm gonna open up for questions here because I know we're running out of time. All right. You want the highest time frame possible for a signal. If you don't wait for a higher time frame, what will happen is, because this was a 1 hour signal, when we go to the higher time frames like the 2 hour, you can see it's not as clean here. We don't have this nice clean signal candle on these higher time frames. Okay. So it took a really long time, you know, not really that long, but it took a few hours for this trade to play out. But ultimately, what's really, really key about all of this, I'm gonna go back to where we started. Let's just add our volume profile. Okay. And we're just gonna zoom way out, way out. Is that we're trading across this node here. Okay, we'll let this load back in. We're trading across the nodes on the VP. That is the core of trading the edges in our system. It's what we teach every single day. So yeah, that is the quick and dirty on this. Let me open it up to questions. Let's see what else we got. Can you replay the trade with one contract just for context? Yeah, sure. I'll show you guys. So on lower leverage, this is what it would have looked like. Go to the 1 hour. And let me actually, okay, let me do that. It will. Okay, so we'll go here. This trade, go down to one contract, replay trading. We'll let our signal candle come out. There's our signal. We hit buy. Okay, put our TP around these highs, overnight high, put my stop loss at the bottom of the candle. Okay, and so we're down a little bit, 300 bucks, up 25, 37. Okay, this is the story with one contract. You're still eating pretty nice with one contract. Okay, 2,500 bucks with one contract you just made there. So pretty good. Pretty good. What other questions do we have here? We're going to do okay. If you don't have questions, I'm gonna, or if you're thinking of questions still, go ahead and keep thinking of them. So there's a few things that I want to call out. This works on all time frames. So let's go back one more day. So this was a trade that I took with my real account. Same node trading the 4 hour. So we had this 4 hour close. This came up right during FOMC. This was a nice trade. I actually took this on NQ. Different contract. My chart looks crazy right now. I don't need any of this. Okay. I took a long off of this high volume doji on the 4 hour and held that all the way to the highs of this node. Okay. A couple hundred points. Long. I didn't get 500 though. I got like 300 something, if I recall. I think it was like 340 points out of this. I did pretty good though. Okay. A couple contracts. So, and I'll just replay this one just so you guys can see kind of what that looked like. Okay. Take it with 3 NQ. Whoa. See, there's some pretty gnarly drawdown in there. Let's let it print. It's going up and down, up and down. Okay. And well, I already got out of my where my TP was. Well, yeah, it's about a $20,000 trade on that one. Okay, so system definitely works, guys. You're not going to see trades all the time. It's not a silver bullet, is what I would say. It's absolutely not a silver bullet, but it definitely works. Okay, so how I do what I do. I bought the hotel to come here. Is $1,500 last minute because I felt like it. You know, bought 2 cars recently. Doing all types of other fun stuff. Trading is super powerful. I love it. Just takes time. Let's see. Oh, we got a bunch of questions popping up now. All right. I think I answered that live. Just Xing these out. Hold up. Yep. Yep, we did that. Yep. When you're utilizing this method in trading an eval account in a prop firm, what is a realistic lot size for risk management? Got it. So trading prop firms. I like prop firms. I think they're a great tool. I'm obviously the face of My Funded Futures. So if you're looking for a prop account, check them out. You can use my code Force Trading to get whatever discount they have. I think they have a few promotions. Here's how I feel about prop firms in general. You should use prop firms to get capital to trade your own account. The easiest way to trade is with your own real money. Okay. Now, if you don't have a lot of money to start, that's where prop firms come in. Where most people mess up with prop firms is they're trying to race to the finish line. They see the payout numbers that people are getting, and they're like, I can get that, right? And you try to coin flip your way to profitability. You're like, I'm going to do a high level trade. I just need to do 2 higher level trades. I do one to pass, and the first trade I take once I pass, I'll make a ton of money. I guarantee you that's not going to happen. So, or if it does happen, it'll happen once, and you literally will never be able to do it again. You'll be super frustrated, and you'll keep beating yourself up thinking you can't trade when really you're just not approaching the markets correctly, right? So you certainly can trade one contract. Like in this environment, you could trade 1 NQ. I mean, this was 300 points. So, using My Funded Futures as an example, 1 NQ, you would have made 6 grand. You're passing most accounts in a few days, which is super fast, but you should give yourself about a month of time to pass. If you're new, you should give yourself months of time to pass. You should be journaling every single day, keeping track of your performance. I have a free trade journal. So if you go to, there's some links I'll show you guys in a second, but I have a free trade journal. You can check that out, start using that. Join our community. So we have a trading community. We trade live. I used to say every day, not every day, but we're in there. Yeah, but yeah, proper real, it's the same stuff. Let's see, next question. Can you do a trade from another day with a separate node? I don't have one ready, but we trade. This is how I trade all the time. You can just replay any node and kind of see for yourself. 1/200th, I'm not sure what that is. In terms of looking for the high time frame signal, there's a certain times of the day that makes the most sense to look: 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m. Yeah, so if I'm trading the 4-hour, okay, there's a few candles that are always going to pop up. Okay, the 6 a.m. candle, the 10 a.m. candle. Okay, this was a 10 a.m. close. 6 a.m. is always going to be a little bit lower volume than 10 a.m., obviously, but 10 a.m. and 2. When I'm super busy, I'll just look at the charts at 10 and 2, and I'll decide if I want to take a trade. Okay, super simple. Higher is better, so I like 10 and 2. At 10 and 2, I also check the 2-hour and the 1-hour. Since ES is leading, would it be safe to long on NQ once there's confirmation on ES? Yep, that's what I do all the time. I'll trade NQ for the higher leverage, and I use ES as the leader. Is this being recorded? Yep, it's being recorded. It is being recorded. Okay, so there's a few resources I want to leave you all with. Keep asking questions if you want. This is very, very brief, okay? Like, very brief. There's a few resources for you. So let me go to my screen share and find this. What do you guys see? Do you guys see? It says my screen share is paused. I think it's broken. Hold on. Oh, okay. Figured it out. All right. So I think you guys can still see this. So there's a few places. Okay. One, we stream in Trade Edge every single day. This is our baby. This is where I invest most of my time. So if you ask me questions in my DMs or elsewhere and I don't respond, it's because, you know, we have this curated space. Please ask me there, or I'll direct you there. Always down to help people though. It's myself and then another trader that I know named Soul. We ping pong back and forth trading live, and we both trade the same system. I have a course, right? Trading with Forrest. It's 40 something videos. It is expensive, but it goes over this in depth, in detail. The combination of the course and YouTube will get you right. Check out my YouTube channel. It's just at Force. Basically, everything that I think, as well as my system, as well as my old systems and everything, is all on my YouTube channel for free. Okay, think of the course as a curated, guided version of that. I also have a coaching program, which is the same curriculum as the course, but we do 6 weeks. You know, going through everything every Sunday. We usually touch on every single topic for about 3 hours for 6 weeks. Okay, so there's a few different options for learning. The best thing to do, my recommended approach would be to start with a pen and pencil and start journaling, doing performance tracking. You're going to ask better questions if you prepare. Okay, I'd love for a gazillion people to come and sign up for my course. I'm an entrepreneur. I like making money, but I'd much rather work with people who are, you know, taking it seriously. You know, just with where I'm at in life today, it's much more fulfilling for me. So however you go about it, take it seriously. Don't waste your time. Again, trading is extremely hard. You absolutely, without a doubt, will fail if you don't take it seriously. I'm not going to BS you and say everybody can do it. You've got it, because you don't. Okay. If you don't take time to look at your performance, if you traded this past week and you haven't looked at your performance from this week and you don't plan to, you know, you're doing yourself a disservice. So keep that in mind if you want to do this thing. But it certainly is possible, guys. It certainly is possible. Any other last minute questions, concerns, thoughts? For the Discord, we do stream. We have a free stream every single Friday. Okay. It is a premium Discord, but there's a 2-week free trial if you want to hop into the Discord. We do stream for free every single Friday. We're there. Cool. Well, I appreciate if there are no other different questions, I appreciate all of you hopping on. I think one more question came in. Thanks, Forrest. Cool. I appreciate all of you hopping on. Understand you could be doing anything else Saturday morning. Really just want to show you guys what is possible. You absolutely can do this if you take it seriously, journal, track your performance, be different, do the things that the people that you want to be like do, right? Do the daily affirmations, work out, think about your health and fitness, right? Think about what you're consuming mentally, right? Otherwise, you'll continue your mediocre existence and you can't really be upset about it because you're doing what the people in the middle do. Okay, it's not about looking down on people. It's about not laying down in bed every night and imagining the same thing over and over. What if I did this? What if I did this? What if I did this? Just go do it. Just go do it. Okay. And you might go inspire some of those other people who are right there in the middle with you. That's all it's about. Okay. Realize your potential. Life is short. I'm not going to go on the tangent about all the times I've almost died at this point in my life, but they fuel me every single day. So that's it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have an awesome day. And I'm going to go enjoy the keys a little bit. What if I just did this for like 3 minutes? I'm not going to. All right, I'm out of here.